Hello and welcome to the first interview of the Wisdom from the Cradle interview series. My name is Sophrony. I'm joined here with Xenia, whose father is a priest in the Orthodox tradition. You are currently a worker at the only Eastern Orthodox orphanage in North America, located outside of Tijuana, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Tijuana.
What else should the audience know about you and your service to the church?
Like
vocation-wise?
Yeah, I grew up in the church. I grew up chanting and singing, which has been kind of a big director for my vocation. And when I finished college, I spent a few years in childcare and teaching, kind of in various iterations. And did some service work in Pittsburgh, and then I went to Mexico to kind of continue that with the children there.
Okay. So today's interview is to cover some of your work in Mexico, but its main intent is to get a Cradle Orthodox views on the most recent waves of converts, in particular the COVID and post-COVID groups. Considering the growth of the parish your father oversees, I assume you have seen countless converts come and go. So you probably have more than a first few hand experiences with both the new and the experienced converts from every walk of life. And also, since you're not of one of the historically ethnic Orthodox backgrounds, your views and experiences are not tied to a so-called cultural Orthodox.
Right.
But from an upbringing entirely focused on living the Orthodox phronema. For those unfamiliar with the term, phronema refers to the mindset or outlook of an Orthodox Christian, encompassing both their faith and practice. It is a way of thinking, feeling, and acting that reflects the Orthodox understanding of God and the world. Attaining phronema is a journey of aligning one's mind and heart with the teachings and experience of the Orthodox Church. Would you say this definition is accurate?
Yeah, as far as I'm familiar with it, yes.
Okay. So, would you mind giving some details about the orphanage, maybe like a little short bit about its history and the mission there?
Oh, for sure. It's been around for quite a while now. I think it was founded in the late 70s or sometime in the 80s. They're going to kill me when I get back.
Yeah.
I know a lot less about its beginnings than about its current operations. I've been there for about 7 months. Its operations are kind of it's an orphanage, and it's also a home building program. So there's so much need. Mexico doesn't have a foster care system the way that we do in America. It's a little bit different. Foster care, children who fall into foster care will be sent to orphanages to be raised, kind of all over the country. And so we're the Orthodox one in Mexico, but there's also a lot of need, especially in the area, for housing. There are a lot of people who come up from the south of Mexico who find themselves in difficult circumstances, especially have families in difficult circumstances, and they need housing. And so one of the things that Project Mexico does is provide housing free of charge for those people in need.
Okay. And what was your initial introduction to the orphanage?
It was sudden. My sister and her husband live there and have lived and worked there for close to 2 years now. And last summer I was in Pittsburgh trying to figure out what my next step was. And she was about to get married at the time, and she said, "Hey, you've hardly gotten to know him. You haven't seen my life, my work here. Come see the orphanage. Come see me. I haven't seen you in a while." We'd been, basically geographic opposite directions for a year or so at that point. And yeah, she said, "Come see me." And I was like, "Well, no, I'm busy. If I can buy a plane ticket," I kind of waffled about it. And God said, "No, you're getting on a plane." So he, in retrospect, arranged circumstances pretty clearly. And I found myself buying a plane ticket, which I had not thought I was going to buy. And I went to see it. And I was supposed to stay for a week. And I stayed for a month, and at the end of the first week, I went to them and I was like, "Please, can I come back for a longer time to come and work here, come and serve here?" And through the process, the door opened, thank God, and now I'm there.
Yeah. What are your roles and responsibilities at the orphanage?
I'm one of the caregivers for the Casa Cuna. The orphanage is kind of sort of split into two parts under the umbrella of St. Innocent's Orphanage. Okay. There's the space where the boys up top, the older boys from ages somewhere around 5 to young adult will live and work and go to school. And then there's a newer part of the orphanage called the Casa Cuna, which means like cradle house or crib house, where we take infants and toddlers just about through 5 years old. So I work there. I work with the littlest ones.
And so your time down there, would you say it's changed the way you see God? Like the kind of things you pray for, how you listen for his voice? Like the more like internalized aspects of our faith?
I think the really illuminating thing to me was the process of getting there. Being there, it's very much a kind of live the faith day in and day out in your work and, at home and in church kind of thing. But as I look at the time that I've spent there and as I look at the process of deciding to go and be there, well, I guess it wasn't so much my choice as the mother of God's, but yeah, the short answer is yes.
Okay. So it's kind of like that where we reflect on how we got to the point, not the point itself. Like, yeah.
As I look back, I often, when in the moment, I don't have, well, you know what they say, hindsight is 20/20. A lot of the time in the moment, I only have clarity when I'm looking backwards. In 6 more months, I'll have clarity on where I am now, Lord willing. But I don't usually have it until some time has passed, and I can look back and kind of see the thread of, that God has woven through the circumstances.
Has God ever surprised you in that? Like, well, not just like kind of like where he's led you, whether it's Mexico or Pittsburgh or even like maybe who he's placed in your life, at that time, whether it's for a season or for longer.
Mexico is a surprise to me. Before I was in Mexico, I was in Pittsburgh for 2 years, and going to Pittsburgh was a surprise for me too. It was, I think I got the call to potentially go and join the Orthodox Volunteer Corps down there. I think it was 10 days, maybe 2 weeks before the date that I needed to be down there. And so in one day, my life kind of changed from not doing it to moving to Pittsburgh, and Mexico was similar.
So you've been at a couple different places then so far, Pittsburgh, Mexico, and here, I won't say which state we're in, but do you feel like that's kind of a calling for you to just keep going, or is this like just a temporary kind of thing? Because as you know, some of the elders, they talk about doing these types of works in your younger years, because once we get too old, we, then the spirit has to make up for what the body can no longer do. Do you feel like this is something that you're set on doing for a while, or is this sort of just a season?
That's a good question. I have no idea. Yeah. I used to try and make things make sense to me by kind of weaving my own story perception of what was happening in my life at the time and where I thought God was guiding me. And I have been wrong most of the time when I try to do that. So now I'm just along for the ride. And when God wants things to change, I do think he usually makes it clear when it's time to change. He gives little tugs, he gives little calls. Sometimes he gives loud ones if you're really stubborn, or if you really need that. So I don't know. I'm just waiting for him to tug me somewhere, and Lord willing, I'll follow.
So how long have you been down there for now?
7 months.
7 months.
Yeah, 7 months.
So in those 7 months, what's probably the funniest or most unexpected thing a child at the orphanage has said to you?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think there are a lot, but because there's still a language barrier, I'm fairly confident that I have missed out on a number of them. Let's see. I've definitely missed out on a fair number of them. The one that comes to mind is the kind of classic, I'm very easily confused for other young women of similar age because there's so many, because the American workers are all white.
Yeah.
When you're a child growing up, in Mexico, to see someone white is a little bit less. It's a little bit less common. You kind of notice, they're different from you. There's, all colors down there, definitely a mix, but it's just a little bit, probably something you're a little bit less used to seeing.
Right.
And so to them, we often all look alike. So I've been called all kinds of names, and that's been true. Good names, other names of other workers, and that's been true for a lot of the other young women as well. I can't unfortunately call to mind any really, really funny interactions right now, but that's definitely kind of common and amusing one, depending on who you're called.
Have you formed a deep connection with any particular child, or were you able to build a deep connection with all or most of the children kind of equally?
I have connections with all of the kids because I don't know. I'm a little bit filling the role that a mom would fill in their lives, along with the other caregivers there. It's around the clock care. I see these children in the middle of the night for diaper changes, and when we have to give them medicine, and I see them waking up from their naps, and we're playing and we're eating, and all kinds of things. So I see more or less every moment, depending on the shift that I'm working at the time. So I have what I would consider a connection with all of them. There's one with whom I have a more meaningful connection, but it's not what you think. It's just been forged through considerable difficulty with this one child. This is a child who's offered a lot of challenges and a lot of really serious behavioral issues, and has kind of been. People are going to be mad at me. I'm just going to go ahead and say kind of my thorn in the flesh. And it's possible that I also have been this for her, because I think that consistent discipline and consistent routines throughout the day are really, really important, and she doesn't always like those. But I'm really grateful, because in the process of getting to know this child and learning to become sensitive to her needs and learning her ins and outs and the issues that she kind of comes with, and having seen a fair number of really, really terrible tantrums and things like things like that, it's I'm a lot closer to her than I used to be, and I think that God has used that both to humble me, because I can't fix her, I can't deal, I can't heal any of the issues that she's going through. I also can't be perfect for her. I'm going to respond with internal frustration to some of the things that she does to frustrate me and the other caregivers. But I feel that the time that I've gotten to spend with her has been God kind of humbling me and teaching me a little bit about laying down what my inner sense of justice believes is just, and learning a lot more about God's justice, which is not the same as ours.
Yeah, of course.
Been learning about her needs and learning how to be more sensitive to those, and learning that this is so basic but not right all the time. I'm not right all the time.
Was there a moment in that time with her that you were just like, okay, I need to I might be troubling her more if I keep trying to push her in the way that I think it's supposed to be, rather than, okay, God's love is calling me to do this instead? You know, it's like, because sometimes when you come up against somebody like that, it's like your ego is conflicting with your conscience and God's law and stuff like that. So was there like a particular moment where you were just like, okay, I need to like calm my ego down, crucify it, and just let God's love speak louder?
There was one day where we'd been having a series of really, really dreadful tantrums. And for context, I'm not going to say this child's name or age.
Of course.
But this child is strong, really, really strong, and of an age that most children have gotten over throwing tantrums. Now she comes from a difficult background, so it's a completely different set of rules for her, and that's also been something that's been really good for me to learn. The rules are different when the background is different, and the rules are different for every child, and that I'm really also thankful to be learning as I go on. But yeah, there was one day where she had thrown the tantrum of tantrums, and she had destroyed everything around her. I mean, broken things, completely torn apart her room. She was starting to attack staff members, and I was inwardly like, this is beyond unacceptable. Absolutely beyond unacceptable. I was really, really frustrated, and I was scared too, because I'm like, it's not. The number of things that we can do to help her and the number of things that we can do to regulate her is very, very limited by law and by resources. So I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do for this child. Now, my sense of justice, I know what my parents would have done if I had done this, and it was, it would be a series of very well-deserved consequences. And one of my supervisors in a meeting about these issues had suggested going on a walk. And I was like, we've tried this. This is not going to work. If anything, she's going to run away, and then we're going to have to, chase her and make sure that she's safe and within, proper bounds and protected, and it's just not going to work out well. And she needs to understand that this behavior is simply just not appropriate, and that you cannot attack staff members and this and that and this and that. I was really, really angry, and I was scared, and I felt helpless. But I had this sense that the right thing to do was to take her out on a walk. And the inner justice and definitely the ego were like, no, consequences. And the obedience and the sense of, that little prompting of the Holy Spirit that you have sometimes, the still small voice for like, walk, do what you're told, to try and help her, but also, to try and calm her down, and then we can worry about like, okay, you did these things, this is not appropriate, these consequences are going to kind of fall into place. So I grit my teeth and I took her on a walk, and it was disastrous the first half, and it was really, really good and really, really helpful for the second half, and I came back kind of like, oh, there's no denying the fruits of obedience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and of just just crucifying your ego again, which was in my case crying out for what I thought was justice, and needed a dose of humility and mercy.
What would you say was the hardest thing to adjust to when you first arrived in Mexico?
Ooh, the cultural differences.
Okay.
They're significant. I didn't think they were going to be because we share a border, and because in so many ways Mexican culture is it's a Western culture in so many ways. I mean, there's so much that's familiar to us. Even a lot of the language is common, different pronunciations of the same words. It's if you're saying the Lord's Prayer, we say temptation. Here they say tentación. And you listen to that having no Spanish, and you're like, I know that word. So I didn't really anticipate it, but the way that children are raised is in some regards, just kind of on the ground day by day, hugely different. And that has been really good and really challenging at the same time to get used to. I have to be really sensitive to the fact that I'm not in my country. I'm being received as a guest elsewhere. And so what I strongly believe to be good for the kids and the children's best interest and this and that is not always going to be the same as the sensibilities of my coworkers. And I need to approach that with most of the time with humility and flexibility and the willingness to bend.
Do you notice a difference in the way that the Mexican workers at the orphanage treat the children compared to the American workers?
Yeah, and I think it's reflective of the cultural differences and understanding. I come from one culture, so I think that way is right. But that's my culture, so of course I do. My Mexican friends and coworkers come from a different culture, and they believe that way is right, and they're wholly justified in that as well. It's what they know, and I do what I know. Can you repeat the question again? There was one facet of it that I really wanted to dig into.
Yeah, of course. Have you noticed a difference in the way that the Mexican workers at the orphanage treat the children compared to American workers? Yes.
So in terms of specifics, there's one specific example that kind of comes to mind. In Mexican culture, for a woman this is what I've seen, and I've only been there for 7 months, so this is what I've observed in that time there, and it may be different for different people in different places. What I've observed while I'm there is that it's very important for wives and mothers in Mexico to keep their houses to keep their houses clean and orderly, and I mean really, really very, very detail-oriented, very diligent. And so what that looks like a lot of the time is when American staff are working with the kids, we're working with the kids. We're taking them outside and going on walks and things like that. We're playing with them, reading to them, and the cleaning will happen less, or it will happen after the children are asleep, or that kind of thing. With my Mexican friends and coworkers, it's kind of the reverse. The children will kind of be in their little play area to kind of independently play, and the staff members will be cleaning and mopping and washing dishes and cleaning windows and things like that. It's another case of different cultural sensibilities. There's definitely, definitely people have kind of their own opinions on those differences. I think that from the point of view of a lot of my Mexican coworkers, we're really not very good at keeping house, and from the point of view of a lot of my American coworkers, our Mexican coworkers are, a little not always paying attention to the babies in the way that we wish they were, and it's another example of just of different cultures doing different things, and that's okay. That kind of has to be my thing at the end of the day. It's different, and that's okay. It's okay.
Have you noticed you or your American coworkers kind of adopting a little bit of the Mexican style, so to speak, the Mexican side of, whether it's childcare or housekeeping, whatever you want to call it? Like maybe you interact with the children slightly different now as compared to, even 6 months ago rather than 7 months.
On the whole, not so much. I think that upbringing is kind of so strong in all of us that everyone, regardless of whether they're Mexican or American, is just kind of, on the whole, going to keep doing what they're doing. Definitely everyone adapts. Most people will adapt a little bit. I have noticed that I... because I don't want my Mexican coworkers, especially if we're switching off shifts, I don't want them to feel like I've left them with a big pile of cleaning to do. So I try to be really, really mindful of the cleaning responsibilities when I'm on shift, because I don't want them to be frustrated or feel disrespected or neglected if I've left them with a big pile of laundry. So I try to stay on top of the cleaning and be mindful of that, which translates to my not spending quite as much time with the kids as I want to, and as I, from a philosophical standpoint, believe that I should. I don't know. It's a case of balance most of the time. You're balancing your relationships with your coworkers and the needs of the children, and both of them matter.
Yeah.
You're never going to. You're not going to be perfect. No one's going to be perfect.
What's something that one of the children has taught you? Whether it's, the way that maybe it's changed the way you see things, life, faith, such like, kind of internalized things like that.
I'm still, it's a hard question to answer because I'm still learning from the children, and a lot of them are still learning to talk.
Okay.
We kind of have varying degrees of language learning, myself included, because I'm still learning Spanish and still practicing with them. But I can tell you one thing that has really stood out for me, which I wish that I had, which I know that I used to have, and which I hope to have again, which is very, very simple joy. When I go to, and it's the gift of the Holy Spirit. And I think a lot of us lose that as time goes on, because life is hard. But also, I think there must be, I don't know, there must be something that we can do to kind of bring it back. I'm not sure, but when I go to wake up the little ones when they've woken up and I go to get them out of their cribs, they're so joyful. Even I have a little grumpy boy who never wants to get up when it's time to get up, and he's a tiny, tiny little boy, and he's still learning to talk, but he'll non-verbally give me very clearly to understand that he has no intention whatsoever of being lifted out of his crib. He'll kind of, pull the blanket over his head and make like a little turtle and just not be wanting to leave his crib. And then I have another one who's very ready to leave his crib and go, see the world anew this morning. But they're both so joy. I mean, they're the first thing in the morning. They're sweet and cheerful, and they smile, and you can see the light in their eyes. And that's true of all of the children. And I want that back. I know that I used to have that, and I am hoping that someday, on this side or the next, the Lord knows, I'll get that back. It's something they've given me something to search for, something to kind of...
That joy.
Something to seek, yeah.
That's beautiful. It's kind of bringing back so you're working with your sister and your brother-in-law as well. Mm-hmm. How's working so closely with family affected your relationship with them? Do you think your bond with your sisters changed a lot since then? Maybe you're closer, or maybe y'all have a little bit deeper understanding of each other now as compared to even when you were growing up?
Yes. And I'm so thankful for that. I might cry. I probably, spending this time with my sister and my brother-in-law, and working so closely, especially with my sister, has probably been one of the greatest gifts that God will ever give me for that relationship. I didn't realize how much I missed her, because we were in completely different geographical locations for years, and not super, super often in contact, which I would go back and change now if I could, but I cannot. But God is restoring the years which the locust has eaten now, because I don't know. The simple answer is yes, and I'm so thankful.
What do you think God has been teaching you through your work at the orphanage the most? Like something that, yeah, like that. What's that first initial thing that made you just go, yeah.
Humility, and just like suck it up and deal with it.
Yeah.
There's and flexibility, and just like, yeah, just get over yourself. Get over yourself. Get over your opinions. Get over the way that you think things should be done. Yeah. Oh my goodness. And just deal with it. This is inconvenient. Okay. That's the way it's going to be. This is hard. Okay. Give voice to that, in an appropriate context and with an appropriate, obviously don't go around complaining to everybody. Give voice to that to, a trusted friend, or to God in front of the icons, or a priest, if you need to. But at the end of the day, make peace and move on. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's kind of a daily lesson, and it's really, 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 really hard sometimes. I'm saying it now with a good attitude because I am not in one of those moments right at this moment, and in shortly I will be, and I'll have to go through that all over again. But it's so true. Most of the time, the thing to do is just make peace and let it be. It's not about me.
So in those hard times, when you're kind of, whether it's that or maybe you're feeling a bit of like a spiritual weariness, is there a particular saint or prayer or psalm that you keep close to your heart to get you to kind of get you through that moment? I mean, obviously, other than like the Jesus prayer, because that's our main thing, but some people, they really rely on maybe like a particular scripture verse, or maybe a prayer by a certain saint, or even, psalm something.
I have a few psalms that really kind of hit home for me during those times. And I'll go to those kind of off and on. I have a list of them in my notes so that I don't forget them. Psalm 68 is one, save me, O God, for the waters have come in unto my soul. That one I love and I go to. There's some of them also which are, I think it's 138. If I make my bed in Sheol, thou art there. That one I love too. But there's one prayer that I pray which is not by any saint, but which is really, really really, really helpful for me when I'm having, when we're having, especially honestly, behavioral issues with the children, or when I'm getting frustrated or impatient. I think I often ask the Mother of God, because they're her children, and she's the protectress of the ranch, very, very clearly. So I often will ask her to help me to love the children the way that she loves them, and to do for the children as she would do for them, to kind of have the discernment to know what they need according to her mother's heart.
Of course.
That one's been really, really helpful for me. It's no prayers are magic, but once in a while she will she will come through when I really, really need help, because she's the protectress of the children and of all of us who care for them. She knows what's best for them, and once in a while she'll give us guidance on that, and it's really great when she does. Yeah, because you can tell once in a while when it's the right thing. You can tell.
Do you think they feel her presence at the orphanage?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, got any stories of her workings there?
Well, I don't want to.
Well, you don't have to share anything.
I can tell you that she brought me there through a process which was really meaningful and a little bit miraculous for me. And I won't go into that now. It's a story for sometimes, but not all the times.
Yeah, of course.
that's true of every single person on the ranch. Everyone kind of has their own process of being called to the ranch, and the Mother of God decides. So it's she who, she's already kind of very closely involved with every person's journey there and their time there. I think that as far as the children are concerned, because I spend most of my time working with very, very young ones, they're still learning about her. So I don't have a lot of really, really good stories about experiences that they've had with her, because they're still infants and toddlers, and I don't know. They look at her icon a lot. Even the babies who are still in arms and, can't walk or anything or talk, they'll look away sometimes from the faces of us, moving and smiling and interacting with them, and they'll look towards her icon. I don't want to go too deep into that also, because it feels a little bit like a mystery, but
of course,
I always kind of assume that there's something going on that I can't see. Yeah. It's really kind of special. She's very clearly the protectress of, I think she's the protectress of any place that asks for it, but she's the protectress of Mexico in particular, because she's so, it's so deeply, even though Catholicism has kind of been waning there for a while, the culture is still so deeply Catholic, and so the reverence for the Mother of God it's woven into like the blood and the bones, and into the land there. And so you can tell, and even sometimes people who don't go to church anymore, who really don't pray, you can tell they still have these hints of devotion to the Mother of God. In the south of Mexico, it's a mission or a church. I'm forgetting the details, but it's and I'm not going to remember the Spanish for it either. But it's the name of the church is, I believe it's the Dormition of the Mother of God. And then they're building a church in Tijuana, close to the ranch. They recently, as of a few months ago, decided on the name for that, and it's going to be the Nativity of the Mother of God. So from north to south, top to bottom of Mexico, the entire country is going to be under her protection, from the beginning of her life on earth to her translation into heaven. All of it will be under her protection, under her mantle.
Oh, that's beautiful. So, hearing about your time in Mexico, it does really show how deeply the faith is part of your life. And it's not just something you learn, but something you're living. That's actually one of the reasons I wanted to ask your thoughts for Wisdom from the Cradle, because you've lived Orthodoxy in a way a lot of us converts are still trying to understand. I just want to remind people that this, in regards to converts, I'm talking about during the times of COVID and after. A lot of us converts have these huge aha moments when they realize the church is the truth. Do you think growing up Orthodox gives a different kind of aha moment, or is it more like a slow, steady deepening into the faith?
I don't know. For anyone other than myself, okay. Obviously. I can tell you what I think. I think that for a lot of Cradle Orthodox, it is a slow deepening. I know that in my case, I always I've had the understanding that the church is the truth for as long as I can remember. Because I had the blessing of growing up very involved. We went to almost all of the services, and we prayed at home, and we kept the fasts, and I think that living that very three-dimensional life, not only in church but at home, gave me an understanding from very, very early that not only is this the truth, but like this matters. This touches every aspect of our life, anytime, any place. Like Christ is there. The church has something for every moment.
So for you, it's not just, it wasn't just something your family did, but because you were raised in it, you also choosing to continue in it, not only because of your free will, but out of your love for the faith as well.
Yeah, we have to be wooed. And this is, again, this is not going to be the case for every convert. I have every Cradle Christian. I have so many friends who grew up in the church. Some of them had, their family backgrounds were much more of a kind of like, sometimes we do this on Sunday kind of thing. And then sometimes they would leave the church for a while and then come back and completely dive into the life of the church. And then I have friends who grew up extraordinarily faithful, with friends who, with families who followed all of the guidelines of the church and who left and who've never come back. And it's not, Lord willing, God will draw them back someday. But it's not, God knows the heart of each person. There's no magic, formula for anything. There's individual hearts, and there's what the church offers us. Of
course.
The way, the path to draw us towards Christ and towards one another. But, oh dear, I forgot the question again.
Oh, it's
I got all excited about
essentially
different experiences.
Essentially you covered. It was essentially like it's not just out of habit that keeps you in the faith.
Right,
it's also your choice to stay in it.
Yes.
Based in love for God and for His church.
Yeah, or for different reasons too. Yeah. That was the other thing. Thank you that I forgot that I was going to touch on briefly, was that most people come to a point where and this is talked about a lot, where they have to kind of decide, like, is this mine or is this not? Am I going to choose this for myself or am I not? And for me, I remember a point in my teens where I was still going through the motions, and the sacraments and, all of these things. And I wasn't seriously searching outside of the church, but I was just kind of like, just again, repetition. It was vain repetition, to be honest, in some ways. Just not really, mind not really in it, heart not really in it, just kind of, okay, this is the truth, they say, and it probably is, yes, but is there anything else out there? Is this really the truth? Just kind of, and I was sort of floating there for a little while. And again, that stage takes so many different forms for so many different people. Some people leave, some people think about it, some people don't. Some people go through the motions and completely lose their belief for a while. It very much depends on the person. That was what it looked like for me. And God woos us through beauty if we let Him. And so right around that time, I started falling completely in love with the hymnography of the church, and really kind of doing a deep dive into that. And by the time I knew where I was, my feet were kind of on firm ground again because of that. And so again, that's just the way it went for me. But God saw what was beautiful to me, and He used that to kind of, to keep me tethered until I was a little bit more stable and a little bit more ready to swim under the water.
Right. Well, what they say about hymnography, it's the prayers of the church. We believe what we pray what we believe. From my own experience, I feel like some of us converts, especially those of us outside the chanter stands, we don't really get to deep dive the hymnography that much. And I think it's just our own shortcomings, really. The sources are out there. We could all sit down and read it if we want to. But has there ever been like a moment when you're chanting where it's just like something just stuck out, like even in the middle of the service, and you're just like, oh, and like your heart was just like, oh man, like this is something I didn't like. I've said this chant 100 times, like 1,000 times since growing up, and now I finally see it. Like God has finally opened my eyes to it. Yeah. There's oh my goodness, there's so many instances of, and it's a little humbling because a lot of the time, it happens with hymns I have been hearing since the beginning of my life, and I have just not been paying attention to them. It's so easy, even at the chanter stand, when you get really, really comfortable with what you're doing, it can be frighteningly easy to stop paying attention to what you're singing and reading. So mindfulness is really, really important and really hard sometimes. But yes, I can't
name a given circumstance in this moment, but absolutely and oftentimes it's convicting, and you get to a line of a hymn and you're like, ooh,
that hurt.
ooh, that one, yep, that's right, and I don't like it, but
I feel personally attacked.
But it's the dart of love. Love can wound in a good way.
It's true.
Too.
Truth can sting.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've always wondered is how someone raised in the faith sees all the new converts coming in. Has it been encouraging, overwhelming, or a bit of mix both?
Oh, it's thrilling.
It's thrilling.
It's thrilling, honestly. It's because we're all converts, really. And I've said this before. It's not new to you, but it's like everyone, regardless of their background. It's everyone has to make the decision to walk in the church and live the life of the church and draw near to Christ and to our neighbors and choose the church and choose Christ and choose the faith. And it's everyone's journey. We're all going to the same place, and everyone has to make that choice pretty much every day of their lives. So cradles are converts because they have to make that choice of conversion. We're converting our hearts and minds, the conversion of the old man. Every day of our lives, we have to get up and make those same choices over and over. That's going to be true of every Orthodox Christian until the end of time, when Christ brings us home. But it's really thrilling to see so many people coming into the church with fresh eyes. Once in a while, I get fresh eyes, but it's only once in a while. I grew up with all of these things, which has its own set of blessings. And I'm really, really thankful for it. But to see the freshness in the eyes and in the experiences of so many people who are seeing and experiencing and hearing and smelling incense for the first time in their lives. It's such a beautiful thing. It's such an encouraging thing. It's such a vital part of the life of the church. It's the lifeblood of the church, this renewal, baptism, whether of infants, and chrismation, whether of infants or, folks who are a little farther along, kind of coming into the church again and again and participating again and again in the daily life, the daily struggle, the daily offering with all of the rest of us, the saints, and those of us still on this side. It's thrilling. Yeah. It gives me a lot of joy.
Do you think there's probably been more converts since the 2019 pandemic, or do you think there's more before or after?
I think it comes in waves. I don't know if I could say. I'm sure there's studies for this kind of thing, and you could probably see all kinds of graphs doing things. I don't know. Yeah. My observation at my local parish and at other parishes in the area has kind of been that it will come in waves. So we've had a couple of waves of converts come in since the pandemic, and that is God bringing new life and bringing renewal and bringing healing, because I know that the pandemic and widely polarized responses to it did a number on a lot of parishes. I think it's the provision of God. I don't know if it's if I've noticed very, very clearly more since than before the pandemic.
Did any of their stories or reasons for their conversion kind of surprise you? Something that, not just I was looking for a more traditional parish, or, I was just looking at something that, because my local Protestant Roman Catholic church shut down. Something that just made it oh, wow, of all things,
I love the stories, and every story is beautiful and honorable, because it's a separate story being drawn towards Christ.
Of course.
But some of my favorites are the ones where people come in kicking and screaming, but knowing gosh darn it, like this is the truth and I really don't want it to be, or I'm really weirded out by this, but I must, but this is this is it. I think that not all of us are strong enough to stand that. I doubt that I would be, but I have friends and relatives and acquaintances who have gone through that, and that has been their call, and I'm sure they're pretty spiritually muscular for it. I'm thinking of one friend in particular who's there was a conversation I was taking part, and somebody in the conversation said, man, some of the things like in Orthodoxy for me, when I converted, 25 years ago, it was a really hard pill to swallow. And you just kind of have to go, in and trust that Christ and the church know what they're doing and know what they're talking about. It's trust. And then this one friend says, yeah, for me, it was more of a suppository. This friend is a nurse. And I heard that and was like, that's a very down-to-earth way of discussing it. Very earthy, a little bit nitty-gritty, and for some people so true. It's just really, really difficult. For some people. And in this particular case, a little bit more of the background. This friend essentially knew, like, Christ is drawing me towards orthodoxy. Christ is drawing me towards orthodoxy. I hate this, I hate this, I hate this.
Going out of the comfort.
This is not what I know. This is nothing like what I've been taught. They're doing really weird things, all of this stuff. And yet Christ is very clearly drawing me towards this. This is really, really kind of terrible. And God bless this person. They chose Christ. And here they are.
With the more recent wave, do you think it's changed the dynamic in your parish? Like, not just here, but maybe even back in Pittsburgh?
Yes.
Has it kind of changed the way the services even feel?
Not the service. That's a hard question to answer in a way. For the church at large, no, I don't think so. Because the services themselves, do we change things in the church?
I would say that the only thing notable maybe, and I think it's just a regional thing, is the adoption of the Appalachian style for, Christ is risen and stuff like that. But we don't really do that during the service. It's usually at the end of the service, like afterwards. So I don't really feel like that's a changing of the service, but you can kind of feel like, especially where we're at regionally, that type of culture, the culture that we're in, is kind of like coming into, in a way, the way that the church celebrates certain things.
Which I love. We need to not talk about Appalachian music or I'll go crazy, but in a good way. But
next interview.
Yeah, right. I think for the worship of the church as a whole, I don't think that the pandemic really changed anything. There were temporary measures that were adopted in some parishes and in some parishes not. And I think for the parishes that I know of, those things have gone away. In the parish that I call home, we had chairs before, and my priest had always kind of been intending to sort of phase them out, because if you look at many Old World Orthodox churches, they don't have chairs in the nave. People stand, they sit as they need to, no one pays attention to what anyone else is doing. Keep your eyes on your own plate, worry about yourself. And I also have really liked it when I've been in parishes that do that. But different parishes will do different things that work for them, and it's all blessed. And when COVID came along, my home parish took the chairs out so that people could space out a little bit more, and they never came back. But they never came back because we'd always kind of been heading towards that anyway, and I really, really like it. It's a very it's a very communal, a very holistic feeling, and I like that. And then some people love chairs, some people love pews, and that is completely fine too. It's, what does your priest bless? Yeah. What are the needs of the parish? I think from my personal experience, A lot of churches, including my home parish, were hit pretty hard with folks leaving.
Yeah.
Either because a church would be taking measures for the pandemic, and some people thought it was insane and way too much, and some people thought it was insane and not nearly enough, and we're all going to be in danger. And so there was such a, so much polarization, and I don't know, some of that remains, I think, when if you have a discussion with people and there are differing opinions on that. For me, kind of the residual thing is that I saw so many people leave. And I saw so many people that I had known and loved for a very long time leave. And I saw so many people, well, I won't go into that, but that I kind of, when I walk into church now, this is something I definitely need to work on, but I'm always kind of coming in with like, okay, who's next?
Yeah.
Who else is going to send, an angry email and leave?
Yeah.
Who else is going to just kind of disappear? Who else that I love and pray for and consider a part of my community is just going to disappear?
Just not be here one Sunday. And that's
yeah,
it.
or make a big fuss and then leave.
Yeah.
I want to be very clear that everyone's at a different place. Everyone has their own walk with Christ. I don't know, for those I love who relocated during that time or after, I don't, like, it's between them and God and their current priest. But just speaking for someone who watched it and for someone who experienced it, and as someone who kind of feel like I've lost a lot of people that I love, I can't help but walk into church wondering who's next. Mm-hmm. That's dealt a pretty significant blow to my sense of communal stability, which I hope that that God will heal in time. I have to cooperate with that process too, and not give in to those thoughts when they come. But yeah,
It's when we go through these types of heartbreaks, it can kind of even change the way that we pray for those people. Did you feel that kind of change, or was it sort of like over time?
Yeah, definitely. I think the temptation to anger was so strong, especially at first, watching all of this go down. I didn't always understand, and when the reasons that people had, and then when I did understand, it didn't always make sense to me at all. And I would disagree. And I think that the evil one, he'll get you kind of however he can. He'll find your weak spots and go for them. So I definitely had a lot of anger that I was trying to kind of fight with at first, and that I didn't always fight with well or successfully. And as time goes on, I found my prayers softening from, Lord, like, this doesn't make sense. I don't understand. I'm so angry. I am so hurt. Guide everyone, including me, like, to the right thing, whatever that is, because I can't know, but like, fix this, essentially. Kind of a whole lot of like, fix this, Lord, fix this. And I think it's changed to a lot of like, Lord, we have a common enemy, the disagreements and the hurt relationships and all of those, all of that ickiness. It's a symptom of an illness that we all share.
Yeah.
We have a common enemy, and that's the evil one, and he'll do anything he can to stir us up against one another, or against the church, or against anything to divide. So, Lord, take him down, and bring, guide us towards peace, and I don't know, heal us, bring us all where we need to be, because you know where we need to be. Bring us where we need to be, heal us of whatever we need to be healed of, and deliver us from the common enemy. That one really helps me, because when there are disagreements in the church, as there will be, there have been since the upper room, we've been fighting since then, we're going to continue to do so. It has really, really helped me to remind myself in prayer that we're dealing with a common enemy, that my enemy is not the person who thinks or feels differently about this issue, or who said something really, really nasty, or who sent an angry email, or did this thing or that thing. They're not the enemy. This is not an us versus them kind of situation. This is all of us together, common sinners, against the evil one. But really, it's Christ who has conquered the evil one. So, I don't know. Yeah, that's been helpful for me. I don't really want to feed into any more of the division. There's been quite enough of that already. Yeah,
of course. So is there anything that you've taken from the converts for yourself? Like, they come in, they're really, really zealous, but they got that zealotry, but they're still, fresh. Have you ever met one that just like kind of re-inflamed that zealotry or that desire to dive deeper?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think all the time, when you see someone who's on, who has that kind of fire, and that kind of freshness, it makes me take a look at my own spiritual life and my own relationship with the church and my own relationship with my neighbors, and kind of check in, like, am I living the life? Mm-hmm. Am I living the life? Am I walking the walk? Am I practicing? Mm-hmm. Am I really, really taking on the mind of Christ? Obviously, I can't do that on my own strength, but, am I cooperating? Yeah. As much as I think I am? Usually the answer is no, I'm not cooperating as much as I think I am. But it's a really, really good checkpoint. To look at myself and dive deeper, go all the way under the waves. We're never going to hit the bottom, and thank God for that. I need Christ to be bigger than me. I need the truth to be bigger than me. I need the church to be bigger than I am, and it always will be, and he always will be. But I'm really, really thankful to all of the brothers and sisters and new folks who come in and remind me, like, check in with yourself, check in. Am I living the life? Am I doing it?
Do you think that fresh perspective helps keep Cradle from growing too complacent?
I certainly hope so.
Or too comfortable?
Yeah, no, I certainly hope so. I really don't like I don't like a sense of superiority on either side, because there is no existing superiority. Oh, yeah. There are blessings that come on either side, and there are drawbacks and points of difficulty that happen regardless, whether your background is Cradle or convert. So I really don't like I'm Cradle, or, I just came into it with, so much freshness, and and look at you, Cradle's not, practicing the way a true Orthodox Christian should. There's all kinds of like gunk on both sides that we don't need. Yeah. Because there's not really sides. Common orthodoxy, common chalice. There it begins, there it ends.
From my own experience, it was like, came in fresh. Like I said, I was at this historically Serbian church. And it's like, taking like 5 minutes to talk to some of these Serbians, it's like they don't know anything, like it's really hard to like rein in that ego of, okay, I need to like, okay, instead of like focusing on what they don't know, maybe I really need to focus on what I don't know. And it's like, well, I don't know why we light candles. Like I don't even know why we do that. Like, why does the priest sense the inside of the church first rather than the people? Like, so there's certain things that it's like, wait a minute, okay, I know the difference between what we believe compared to these other people, but I don't even know like why we do some of the things that we like do every service. And it's like, you're not gonna read that in Orthodox dogmatic theology by Father Michael Pomazanski. It's like
Right.
it's like, no, it's something like, oh, I need to go ask that old Serbian lady right there who's been in the faith since she was born, and even under the communists she was still practicing the faith. It's like, okay, I need to check myself with that head. Like, I got the head knowledge, but I don't have the praxis at all. I don't have the knowledge of the praxis. What do you wish more converts understood early on?
Ooh. Oh gosh. Okay. Oh gosh. Trying to figure out how best to word this. This is from what I've seen, especially as I've seen churches kind of get rocked over the last 2 years by disagreements over things like the pandemic. Listen to your priest.
Yeah.
Honestly, it doesn't matter. And this is this is hard for me too. I've had I've confessed to various priests as I've moved to different places, and I've heard things which made me bite my lip because I really didn't like them. And also, at the end of the day, unless it is an issue of actual dogmatic heresy,
Yeah.
or crime, God forbid, listen to your priest. You need to listen to your priest. I need to listen to my priest. We need to listen to our priests, because obedience is a dirty word in America.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Yeah, obedience is a dirty word.
Yeah.
It's understandable. We are the descendants of the pioneers and the Pilgrims and the Puritans, all of whom left. All of whom are used to kind of, like, in the case of pioneers, like forging their own way and being super independent and being reliant on no man and obedient to no man. And then in the case of like the Puritans, it's the same kind of, we are the descendants of those. And so our culture still, even though we're a long way from the Puritans in a lot of regards, we still have kind of that consciousness deep down that we're independent and we don't listen to anybody. And that's okay. It's okay that that's our cultural inheritance, and it's all right. It can be baptized, but we have to let it be baptized.
Yeah.
And that requires priests. We don't, just because we disagree with our priest, just because we don't like our priest. I've had priests that I didn't really like, and that's hard. I don't have it all figured out. I just want people to know that I haven't just loved every priest I've ever had, and I'm saying this just randomly. People have all had all kinds of serious issues with their priests, and I don't have any kind of wisdom for that. I'm just kind of saying what I have seen to be true in my years in the faith, which is that we're going to disagree, and sometimes we're not going to like them, and we're not going to connect well with them, and we're not going to like the way they run the parish. We're going to have clashes of personality with them. We're going to think that they're unfit shepherds. And most of the time, we need to close our mouths, go to confession and communion, and not gossip about it, and learn how to kind of take it to Christ and understand that our priests are humans and they are men who are called to the priesthood, and the priesthood is Christ's.
Yeah.
And so, as our shepherds, they have the grace of the priesthood, and the grace of the priesthood covers a lot.
Yeah.
The grace of the priesthood matters. I think that we as Americans are so, we're church hoppers, you know? We disagree with something, we go somewhere else. And we do that in the rest of our lives too. You know, we hop jobs, we hop towns. It's very culturally normal, and it's very, well worked into the cultural consciousness that this is something we do. But not in the church. Not in the church. The vast majority of the time, not in the church. We don't, run from problems, and I don't know. Yeah, just we need to listen to our priests. Even if, and most of the time, especially if we don't like them or we disagree with them.
Yeah.
And it's really hard.
Yeah.
And salvation is hard too, so at least you know you're on the right track.
Instead of looking for that voice of affirmation.
Yeah, because we all want to hear,
you're doing great. You're doing great. You don't need to change.
Yes, every time I go to confession, I'm kind of honestly hoping, or for counsel to a priest, I'm hoping to hear this voice of affirmation. Yeah. And I don't always get it, and it's really hard to not get it. But it's so important for us to not seek that insofar as it's possible. It's a struggle for everybody, obviously. We have the same egos and the same passions, but it's not, the priest is not there to be a voice of affirmation. That's not his job. And the people around you, it's kind of the same. It's, I don't know. Plant your roots.
Yeah. So I was essentially raised atheist.
Wow.
So I went from atheism to orthodoxy pretty much.
Nice.
And I gotta say this isn't like a piety brag or anything like that, but some of my fellow converts, their biggest struggle is confession. Because they're like, especially some of the ones from like the more Protestant background, it's like, why do I need to confess to a priest? Like, can't I just go to God alone? And it's like, well, you can, but there's, you're going to miss the absolution prayers or something like that.
Yeah.
And, so for me, like, as hard as confession could be, sometimes it's honestly probably my favorite sacrament. Just that, like, I got to go and, like, be held accountable for this, and I think that's another aspect for Americans, is that personal accountability that we, not everybody obviously, but there's a number of us that we just don't want to be like, oh no, this is my fault, I did this. As much as I can point the fingers at other people, I ultimately chose to do this, and so I think that crucifying of your ego is honestly one of like the most like biggest blessings as an American convert for me, at least. So do you think is that something, or is there certain aspects of the church that Cradle Orthodox take for granted sometimes?
I think it's easy to take anything for granted if it's what you know.
Yeah.
And it's what you've more or less always known. I think that comes really easy. I think... yeah, all of it. Communion, though. Communion's one of those really grievous things where it's, oh, Lord of mercy, where the prayers of the church around the Eucharist that we hear every single Sunday are so clear about not taking it for granted, about being mindful when you approach it. They don't say that so much about confession or unction or the other sacraments. We're supposed to be, obviously we're called to be mindful with every single one of them, but the church is so out there about communion. It's so important for us to prepare ourselves and to be mindful when we receive. And I think that's one of the ones, that's actually probably the sacrament which is the easiest for Cradle, and also converts who have been living the life for several years, to take for granted.
Yeah, of course.
You don't have to make an appointment for communion. It is built into the liturgy every single Sunday. For a lot of it differs from parish to parish, obviously, but for confession, you have to make yourself go.
Yeah.
You have to prepare, because you can't do confession if you don't know what you're confessing. So you have to sit down at least for a bit and think about what is on your conscience. For communion, it's like you stand in church and then you waltz on up and receive, and then that's it. And like, God forbid, but rinse and repeat next Sunday. And it's so easy to do that, and it's so dangerous.
Yeah.
It's so destructive. And I say this as someone who's guilty of it most weeks, of not being mindful enough. Not taking it seriously enough. And not seriously like, ooh, you're going to be struck by lightning kind of thing, but just like, when you are hosting someone that you love, you prepare your house for them. If you're hosting a king, you prepare your entire property for them. You're hosting Maker of the Universe, like, you don't do anything. You know what I mean? And again, I say this, Lord forgive me, as someone who does precisely that very, very often. And then once in a while I realize what I'm doing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Lord have mercy. And he does, thank God. But I think the Eucharist is definitely the easiest one to just go again and again and again and again, and stop thinking about what you're doing, and stop thinking about the mindset with which you're approaching, and stop thinking about preparing.
So, other than your conscience actively like snapping you out of it, what's something that you maybe remember or think about or do on that kind of like that reminds you, like, hey, you're being a little too comfortable in this area, or a little too complacent about this. And so like for me, I know I've fallen into being too comfortable, but like reading the Synaxarium on the day-to-day basis, like, this person literally died in one of the worst ways possible for his faith, and then I can't even do like my evening prayers. Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm gonna have to stand before like this martyr who has like one of the worst deaths I've ever read, and I'm gonna be like, well, I just didn't want to do it. It's like,
I was on my phone.
I was watching YouTube until 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah. I actually really I kind of piggyback off the Synaxarian one.
Okay. Yeah.
Not that I think when I read the lives of the saints, if I try to make that, and I've gone through periods in my life where I did it really faithfully, and periods in my life where I didn't do it at all.
Yeah.
I have no perfect record there at all. But I know that the times in my life when I have been doing it on a regular basis, I don't know, for me, it's easier to be mindful of Christ the rest of the day. I don't know if it's not going to be everyone's like super, super helpful, being mindful of the Eucharist tip. It's what has worked for me. It's what's been good for me. Oh, and the other thing is the pre-communion prayers.
Oh, yeah.
Depending on the parish, some parishes will offer them before Orthros or even the night before, and then some parishes don't, and it's more up to the individual kind of Christian to do that. Either way, I think it's really, I know from sad, sinful experience that it's really, really important to do those, because they're built to make us mindful. They're intended to keep us like grounded, and so that we are paying attention and we know that we're approaching Christ. For me, it's a really, really important thing to read the pre-communion prayers, and I don't always do it. For some people, it's a discipline that their priest gives them. Even it definitely varies. But when I don't, I feel it a lot. When I do, we're never going to be fully prepared, because we're all sinners and we're all in the same hospital, to be healed. But I feel like I have offered a little bit more of myself in preparation when I have taken the time to read those prayers in front of the icons or in the car on the way. Some families have lots of children and you just don't have time
to do it.
Something my mom used to do was read them in the way to church, in the car on the way to church, because we had no kind of time to do it at home. And obviously, once you're in church, you're wrangling kids. So we did it in the car, and that was what we were able to do. And we didn't always get through all of them, and that was okay. You do what you can.
God knowing your heart. It's
God
like, yeah, we
knows.
wanted to do all of them, but
God knows. Yeah. God
this
knows.
little one decided to throw her sister's shoe out of the window on the, on the
Yeah, and then we were 20 minutes late because yeah.
Is there anything you gently challenge us converts to grow in, like a particular virtue or just something that needs more cultivating? I know, like, obviously we try not to generalize, but
Yeah.
from my own personal experience, especially with the more online-centered converts, it's like a unrestrained zealotry of one state that honestly makes people insufferable. I'm not gonna lie. It's like I've talked to people who are like, I was actually interested in looking more into Orthodoxy, but then I met this one character who claims to be Orthodox, and everything they said just turned me off. And it's like, well, was it about Orthodoxy? It was just their personal opinions. And it's like, well, their personal opinions. And it's like, well, okay, so now I got to spend 30 minutes explaining that there's sick people in the church, just like we're all sick. That's why it's the hospital for the souls.
Yeah.
But that's not the Orthodox teaching about that, So what do you like? So what would you think is something that, whether online or in person in parish, something that converts in general probably need to work on more?
Well, gosh. I mean, everything that comes out of my mouth is going to be condemnation of me because the struggles that we see or the failings that we see in other people are usually reflections of our own. So with that understood, I'm afraid to open my mouth, but
I'll put myself out there first.
Okay.
I'll take the first bullet. I would say self-restraint.
Yeah.
We, in part, especially us younger guys, it's like we want everyone to know about Orthodoxy. And if you have any opposition towards it, we just want to crush them. And it's not a very good look.
Yeah.
Because people think that, if I go to the Orthodox church and I have things I disagree with, they're just gonna crucify me in the church. And it's like, well, no, just go to the church and figure it out on your way.
Yeah.
So personally, I would say self-restraint.
Yeah.
It's a really big issue for a lot of people that are coming, especially this newest wave. They get a lot of their influence from certain characters on YouTube or TikTok, or I won't name names, but some of those people are helpful in bringing people into the faith, but some of those people come into the faith because of them want to mimic them, and they're just, like I said, kind of insufferable.
Mercy.
Yeah.
Makes me think, when am I insufferable? You can ask my family, the people I live with. Lord have mercy. I think the first thing I would say, and again, this definitely applies to all of us. I'm just going to, because you're asking about what I've seen kind of come out sometimes with brothers and sisters who have converted. Just living the life, for one thing. And I mean living the life under direction. What you don't do is you read about this desert father who did 8,000 prostrations per night and ate once a week, and it was like 3 crumbs of bread, and this and this and this and this, or someone less extreme. It's any number of things. I think what I'm really trying to say is, without the direction of your spiritual father or your priest or whoever you're going to confession to, or that priest who is kind of the shepherd for your soul, for whatever parish you happen to be in, if you're near a parish, we're all liable to go crazy. What is it they say? I think it's one of the Desert Fathers. I don't remember who, but they say a
man who has himself
for his spiritual father has a fool. And I've had that one quoted at me quite rightly, might I say.
Same here.
Yeah, but I think it's so important. It's so important to do what we do with the blessing and under the direction of a priest. I'm not saying you have to have a starets like the Russian starets and be completely, with them every second of the day and text them every single day with, these burning questions about, whether or not it's acceptable to, this and that. It's all of our journeys toward Christ are different, but get direction. Live the life. As you're able to, keep the fasts. If you're not able to for medical reasons, that's a different kind of fast. It's not that you're not fasting, it's you're fasting differently.
It's part of your fast.
Yeah, it's a part of your fast because it's the mortification of your body. It's the suffering of your body, or you're feeding children from your body if you're a mama or whatever it is. But live the life. Take part in the sacraments, go to church when it's really inconvenient. Yeah. Because that's terrible and really important to drag yourself. And if you have children, all of these children into the car and oh my goodness, and the evil one will come out when you're trying to get to church. He will do everything he can. I have friends who have depressive episodes only on Sunday mornings that keep them from getting to church. Every family I know has a horrible screaming fight before they get to church. It's not us. It's the evil one. Yeah. We need to just keep marching along and ignore him to the best of our ability. But yeah, just for us all, and that goes for us all, just live the life and keep living the life. Go to church, say your prayers, participate in the sacraments, and do those. And if you do some spiritual reading on the regular, but under somebody's direction. Because otherwise, I did this when I was 9 years old, and it messed me up for years. I think I read Elder Paisios or maybe Saint Porphyrios right before he was canonized. And I read something that I was just reading without any kind of guidance or direction, just reading stuff, and I came across stuff I was not prepared for, and I didn't know how to deal with it, and it messed me up for a long, long time. Not because there's anything wrong with Saints Paisios or Porphyrios, but because I was doing it without direction, and I wasn't prepared for what I was coming across. So whatever disciplines of the faith you're doing, however you're living the life, do it with the guidance of your local priest. Again, it doesn't have to be some capital S, capital F, spiritual father. You need to
some clairvoyant elder.
Right. If you have one of those, thank God, you are very blessed. Take advantage. But it's okay. It's okay if it's your parish priest and he's the closest thing that you have to a spiritual father. Some people do consider that a spiritual father relationship. Some people don't. But with the guidance of your local priest, just do it. Just do it. Get your feet on the ground with people. And do it. The second thing I would say, and kind of tied to that also would be to, unless you have no access to a church anywhere near you, try to limit your exposure to internet orthodoxy, because you just don't know who's on the other side of the forum or the YouTube channel or whatever, and it's just not, they're not your local priest. No. They're almost certainly not your local priest. So, that's what I would say for the one thing. People accumulate a lot of damage there, and I don't want that to happen to folks. No. The other thing I would say, which maybe this will kind of seem like it comes out of the blue, but do not gossip. Do not gossip, ever. No.
Destroys communities.
It absolutely destroys communities. It destroys communities. It doesn't matter if it's true or false, although certainly if it's false, it can do more damage. Do not gossip. It is, honestly, it's the one thing in all of these years with being at some communities for a very long time and, being and at others for just a couple of years, it is maybe the number one destroyer of community that I have seen. It is incredibly, incredibly toxic, incredibly destructive. We are going to get angry. We're going to disagree. We're going to have all kinds of nasty, negative emotions, some of which we'll feel are justified, some of which maybe, some of which will not be. None of it is reason to gossip. None. We have three options. We can take it to God and pour out our complaint, like David says. He was obviously intimately acquainted with all of that, those negative emotions. We can pour it out before God and keep it away from our neighbor or the person with whom we happen to be frustrated. We can take it to them in a way that is life-giving to the relationship, and not with the intent to destroy. We can say, this is bothering me, this really drives me crazy, I can't, this thing you said really, puts me off, can we talk through this? Or we can keep it to ourselves. We cannot go talk to other people in the community about it in a way that spreads negativity. And we can talk to the person involved, we can talk to our priest, or we can talk to God. Gossip is, from what I've seen, the number one most destructive thing that anyone can do in their local community.
I think your own father said to me once when I asked him about gossip, and he said, gossip is a type of murder. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, it's a murder of somebody's character. Not only that, it's a murder of your character, because now whoever you're gossiping to, if their conscience speaks loud enough to them, it's like, I can't trust this person. And it's like, even if you slipped up that one time, now you put a mark on yourself as being somebody that, well, I can't talk to this person about anything. He or she's gonna go spread it to, somebody that might actually have really evil intentions towards me or my family or whoever. So definitely don't gossip.
Yeah. And Lord have mercy. Again, I am not guiltless. Lord knows. Lord knows. May we all be healed of it. Yeah.
Hopefully not painfully so, but sometimes it's
God
necessary.
will use, God will do what he's got to do. I've learned from being hard-hearted in my own life that he'll do what he needs to do. And if it's a soft, gentle touch, and that's all we need, thank God. I know many such people. And if in my case, I'm like a stone, he takes a chisel. Because that's what a stone needs. So don't be a stone.
I actually remember a Life of the Saint, this young man, he went and confessed. It was either slander or gossip, or maybe it was even bad language, whatever it was. But his spiritual father says, I want you to lick the ground from the front of the church all the way to your house. And the guy was like, what? And he's like, I want you to do that. And the guy was like, okay. I mean, out of obedience, he did. And so while he's crawling home, I don't even know how far it was. Maybe it was down the block. Maybe it was like half a mile. Who knows? He's licking, the ground, and it's cutting open his tongue, and it causes a major infection in his tongue, and he's not able to speak for like a month, pretty much, because his tongue is so swollen. All he can do is eat soft foods and water and stuff like that. So now he's forced to fast. He can't eat, steak or whatever, anything rich food. It's just gruel and water. And when his tongue finally, the swelling went down and he was able to talk again, never gossiped or slandered ever again. And it's sometimes you need that serious penance, and sometimes it's oh man, I really hurt that person's feelings. I really shouldn't do that ever again.
My priests have been going really light on me my whole life. Holy cow!
It's I think about that story every once in a while. I'm like, man, that parking lot's kind of big. Really really
that gravel road. Or
the path around the church. It's oh man, there's poison oak on the path there. I really don't. Okay, I should not do that.
Lord have mercy. Yeah. Lord have mercy.
To kind of go back to what you're saying about living the life, living the church. One thing I've noticed is that some cradles, like I said earlier, in my own where I was originally brought in, they have a deeper understanding of so-called living the church, but are less knowledgeable of the so-called heavy theological teachings. And what I mean by that is the Cappadocian Fathers, the Colivati Fathers, these big writers, church fathers, and even some more recent ones. But some of the converts on the invert, they don't know why we even do the Apostles' Fast. What's the point of this, that, and the other? Why do we light candles? Why do we, on the feast day of the beheading of St. John the Baptist, we don't serve food on plates? You're supposed to serve it in a bowl. So they kind of don't understand that. How do we get converts and cradles to bridge that gap if they continue to self-segregate? in some aspects.
I'm going to say the first really stupid response first, which is don't self-segregate, which I realize is many orders of magnitude easier to say than to put into practice. But it can also be very, oh gosh, I'm speaking, Lord have mercy. I keep speaking my own condemnation. I say what I know, and I do not always do it. When just like go mix with people you're not comfortable mixing with. I can't believe I'm saying this, Lord have mercy, because I don't always do this. But I know it to be true, so may it bear fruit in my own life first.
Yeah, of course.
I need to go and talk to the people that I don't know yet and I'm not very comfortable talking with. And I need to receive, whatever wisdom that they have for me, and trust that if God has things that he wants them to know, that he'll, share them through me or through somebody else, whoever he chooses. But yeah, I don't know, the self-segregating thing I think is, especially in churches which are really ethnically heavy, it's a very natural thing to happen. Yeah. It's a very natural thing.
You want to be around your people, so to speak.
Yeah, especially if this was not your country of origin. It's such a natural phenomenon. It's also so important for us not to, for us to welcome the stranger, whoever they are. I think the other, I think it's really good to mutually ask questions of one another. I grew up, since I grew up Cradle, I can tell you why we do any number of things. There are also going to be reasons for things that I haven't heard of, because the church is, I'm never going to touch the bottom. It's deep. But I can tell you, you asked me why we light a candle, I can tell you why we light a candle. I don't know very much about the Cappadocian Fathers. The perfect case in point. I can tell you a few things about them. I could probably name a couple of them. But I have so many friends who come in from a convert background who could write an essay about it if they wanted to, which is fantastic. So I know who I'm going to when I have questions about the Cappadocian Fathers.
Right.
Thank God. So many of my friends are so well versed in that kind of thing. I think if we keep having the humility to, firstly, to ask questions, and secondly, to admit when we don't know. That's really hard for me sometimes. People will ask me, this question, this question, this question, and sometimes I don't know the answer because the church is, I keep saying this, but the church is bigger than I am.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And I'm human, and I haven't learned anything close to everything there is. And sometimes it's really, really hard for me to say I don't know. And it requires a certain amount of discipline. But we have to say it, both for our own humility, so we don't lead other people astray, because if I pretend that I know and make up some kind of answer, well, that's no good. And also so that we can, continue that mutual sharing of knowledge that we need that somebody else has.
I give a little grace. I give a lot of grace to the older converts and even American cradles such as yourself, where it's like a lot of these resources weren't in English until the last 15 years.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
There's been so much translation work done in the past 15, 20 years that it's it's a blessing that we have what we have, and then that we just keep getting more and more stuff every year. So I don't really hold it against them that much anymore. I used to at the beginning, but then it's well, you know what? The Serbians, they had to go through the communist era, and that was not easy for anybody. So if they come over here, and it's not for a reason for evangelism, but it's because they needed to get out, okay. I used to hold it against them for not knowing anything, but it's well, how are they going to know anything when
it's been illegal to practice your faith?
Exactly. Yeah. Or before the communists, it was the Ottomans, which was even worse. Arguably, it was probably, depending on who you ask.
You have to be careful you say that too, because depending, no, this was worse, or no, this was worse. Exactly. I think we can all agree that they were both very bad.
Very horrible. Very, very bad time to live under. So that was something that like that initial ego that comes from finding about this like ancient religion that just didn't exist here in America on a mainstream level and still doesn't. I mean, I think last time I looked, it's like we're still less than 1% of the population. So as much, you know, optics as we're getting now, especially in this year and last year, to the point where there's Orthodox apologetics on Fox News now, even. We're still relatively unheard of. You know, one of the funniest things is when you say you're Orthodox, somebody's like, "You're Jewish," you know.
You're either Jewish, Greek, or Catholic.
Exactly.
It's one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was with the hieromonk one time. I took him to a doctor's appointment, and this woman was like looking around the room when he went inside, and he's like, "Is that a real one? Was that a real one? Was that a real one?" And nobody understood what she was saying. And I finally looked at her and said, "Ma'am, can I help you?" And she's like, "Oh, I was just curious. Was that a real one?" And I was like, "A real what?" And she's like, "A real Jew." And I was like, "Ma'am, he's wearing a very large cross."
That's really,
you know?
that's funny.
And I mean, you know, bless her heart. You know, she's like,
No, yeah.
she's like 80, 90 years old from Middle Tennessee. So of course, you know, Jewish population isn't very big here, and Orthodox Christian is probably even smaller. So I can't really hold it against her.
No. Folks just don't know. It's
Yeah.
not, it's nobody's fault.
How do you think do you think there's ways the parish community could encourage more natural exchange between the two, between converts and cradles?
I think, again, it depends on the parish to some extent. In most of the parishes I've grown up in, there's been a fair mix. Sometimes, sometimes pretty cradle heavy, sometimes a little bit ethnic, and sometimes convert heavy. And in full disclosure, I didn't grow up in that many parishes. Growing up, it was usually a case of being in a place for many, many years before, something necessitated a move, like seminary, or volunteer opportunities. But I think that, I think it's going to be something that each individual parish might have to kind of take a look at and workshop a little bit. Say a Greek parish, which has a very high concentration of folks who are actually from Greece or first, second generation. With a few converts trickling in, that's going to be a very different conversation than the parish I call my home parish now, which is very, very heavily converts, and the cradles who are here are largely American cradles. And so they know the faith. They are growing up with the understanding of the faith, woven into them because they're living the church from infancy, but they don't have the addition of an ethnic background.
Okay.
I think it might be more of a case of individual need and individual workshopping.
Okay. Do you feel like most cradle Orthodox feel confident enough to share their experiences, their lived experiences with converts, or do you think there's a bit of hesitation because of that unfortunate divide?
In my experience, people have been pretty open about it. Wait, hold on, actually. Oh, the people I'm thinking of right now are people who converted in their early 20s maybe, and are now in their 50s or 60s and have been in the church for a long time, but did convert. Let me think again. I think sometimes I as quote unquote cradle sometimes am afraid to talk to quote unquote converts about my experiences in the faith, because I'm afraid that either I'm afraid that they'll think that I am kind of setting myself up as some superior situation, And I don't want folks to feel that way. I want them to feel at home. We share one common chalice. That is all.
Yeah.
We're common sinners. We share a common chalice. That's what matters. So I'm a little scared that they'll be like, oh, dang, this Cradle girl is just talking about all of her spiritual experiences, and she thinks she's so much better than we are. And I know that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
It happens. And I don't want it to. So I'm a little scared for that reason. The other thing, I sometimes wonder, I might be wrong about this, I wonder if Cradle Orthodox are sometimes less open to sharing their experiences in the church because sometimes those experiences are... Orthodoxy has a sense of sacred space that I think a lot of American Orthodoxy doesn't. It is kind of lost over time.
Okay.
I mean, sorry, not American Orthodoxy. Sorry, American Christianity outside of Orthodoxy.
Okay.
Has lost over time, and sacred space involves it's the way we conduct ourselves in our churches. Obviously, is very, very different from a lot of our friends outside of Orthodoxy. But that extends also to experiences of the heart and the inner altar. There are things that, there are stories I don't tell because they're not always supposed to be shared with everybody. Not like there's any exclusive secret knowledge, but just because it's kind of some stories have grace attached to them, and you have to be really, really careful not to spill the grace. It's not a value judgment on the other person at all. It's just, it has more to do with your own heart and your own discernment. And, does it feel right for me to share this story right now? Or would I be setting myself up for pride, that I, had such and such kind of cool moment in my spiritual life? Or is it something that, for whatever reason, the person across from me doesn't need to hear about yet? There's own, not matters of church life and doctrine, obviously, but some experience in my own life. So I think that might be part of the puzzle. I'm not sure, just in my own life. I know it has, and I don't know, it's a matter of discernment.
Just there's another aspect to it, because there's a certain priest that I've listened to for years, and he says that it's not only everything that you mentioned, but it's also you don't want this person to think, why does God love this person more than me?
Yeah, that's the other thing.
It's like, why am I not worthy
oh my
of
gosh,
this,
they must be
vision or
so
this
spiritually
moment.
high up there and so close to God, and I'm just here in the mud.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the other person also there in the mud.
Yeah.
It's just...
They're like, oh man, I probably shouldn't have shared that with that person. Now they're going to feel like less than. And it's like, oh man.
And we know like even the saints who have incredible miracles also feel this way.
Yeah.
They're like, don't tell such and such about this.
Until
or
I'm dead.
Don't, until I'm dead. Or they'll work miracles and they'll weep.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not wordy of this. This is not me. I don't want this. This is Christ, and I don't need this, and this is bad for my ego.
I consider, for me, it's like whenever somebody, because, I live on the mountain, I don't really get to talk to that many people. It's pretty isolated up there. So I do spend quite a bit of time talking to people online, and I'm starting to realize, like even just talking about experiences in the faith can be kind of a pitfall for people. And so I was thinking this one. So other than the very obvious critiques against the so-called online orthodoxy, what do you think are some pitfalls that inexperienced converts fall into? An example I'm familiar with firsthand is essentially the neophyte to monastic trap. Just to give some background for this is, I want to say about 4 or 5 months after my baptism, the priest at the time, we'd already kind of talked about this, but he said, me and this hieromonk were starting a monastery in the state that we reside in, and not where I was living there. I was in Texas at the time, the current state where we're at right now. I would like you to visit, maybe see how you feel about it. And after one visit, I was like, okay, this is where I'm going to be. I know I want to be a monk. I'm gonna move there. We're gonna build this thing up from the ground up. And so within a year of being Orthodox, I moved states. Spent a good amount of money in the move. Moved about 5 minutes down the street from the monastery.
Whoa.
Yeah, I'm really like
you actually you carried it out.
Yeah,
wow.
all the way. And I thought, okay, this has to be blessed, because in all that time of preparing, first because of my upbringing being atheist, I didn't even tell my parents I was Orthodox.
Whoa.
I didn't even tell them I was baptized until about 2 months before I moved.
Whoa.
So it was like, hey, Mom, hey, Dad, I'm Orthodox. And like, yeah, we figured that out. And it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for telling me. I've been like hiding it for a year and I didn't need to. And then it's like, oh, and by the way, I'm moving states to go become a monk. And they're like, wait a minute, what? It's like, I mean, if that's what you want to do, go for it. It's like, all right. So I thought, okay, so I didn't get any flack from family. And then the actual move up here was really easy. Finding somewhere to live that was that close. If everything felt like, okay, this is truly blessed by God, I'm meant to be here. And then through multiple, not only personal developments, but things that were happening at the monastery itself, it's like, okay, I don't think I'm supposed to be a monk. And if it was, it's definitely not here. And then coming to this church, it's like, okay, I definitely don't, like, if monasticism is part of my life, it's later. It's not now. And so after living that pitfall pretty much, because I went through a lot of spiritual damage because of it, I notice now more when I'm talking to like new converts who are like, yeah, I really want to be a monk. And it's like, take a couple years, dude. Just calm down. Like, please, for your own good. You don't have to go to Mount Athos tomorrow. Like,
Right.
You're like, take a minute, take a breather, go visit a few places and stay there for more than a day. I spent about a week at Platina with the monks at St. Herman's. And as much as I really enjoyed being up on that mountain with them, I don't think I would want to do that for a while, So other than so for me, that was the pitfall that I noticed the most. Is there any kind of part, like, pitfall that you've kind of picked up on?
I don't know. I think what comes to mind is something I touched on a little bit earlier, but it comes to mind, so I'm going to say it again, maybe a little bit more. Honestly, church hopping.
Church hopping, yeah.
We did discuss this a little bit earlier, but it happens so often. I've seen it so many times, and I think it's really really easy to kind of to do that, and it's very much in accord with human nature. You don't like it here, you disagree with somebody here, you feel like the grass is greener somewhere else, you go to another parish. The grass is almost never greener somewhere else. It's greener until you have another disagreement with somebody else, or you decide you don't really like the priest and you don't connect with him as well as you thought you would, or the community isn't quite what you thought it was going to be, and then you go to another one. What happens when you run out of local parishes? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it is so in accordance with human nature. It is so, and it's so backed up by the American way of living, where often we job hop. And I don't know that that's necessarily, job hopping. I don't know that that's a bad thing, unless it's a, serious problem in your communal and spiritual life that you can't maintain, stability and relationships anywhere. But I do think that, I don't know. Church hopping is something that I feel like kind of happens a lot and can be really, really destructive spiritually to us when we fall into it. And it's just, it's destructive. It's really hard on communities. It's really hard on priests because no matter who you are, I think probably just about every priest I've ever met, including the priests I know, really well, they think about their parishioners when they're not in church. They pray for their parishioners. If you're not there on a Sunday, especially if it's a slightly smaller parish, the priest probably knows. Not like this person's not in church, but like, I hope they're okay.
You need to text them, see if they're all right.
Yeah. And again, priests are people like everybody else, but it can be hard on the parish, it can be hard on the priests, and it's really, really spiritually destructive to us when we do that, and when we're not willing to see struggle out, when we're not willing to see conflict out, because conflict is an inevitable part of living in community. And if we don't learn how to resolve it, it's, we'll move somewhere else, and then conflict will arise there, and then we'll move somewhere else, and it just kind of perpetuates a cycle that's really, really not good for it's not good for our relationships, but more importantly, it's not good for our souls.
Do you think the church hopping comes from like a kind of a lack of understanding of lay piety? Because it's like part of our seek for piety is steadfastness, and like some people think it's brave to move on when you come to a conflict with somebody. Well, you're stepping away from it, but it's like, well, how's that helping them? How's it helping me, really? Because it's like, if I can't handle just a very simple disagreement with somebody, how am I going to handle needing that steadfastness when, I'm sick and I can't even go to church? I'm bedridden for, a month. And it's like, if I can't even handle having a very simple disagreement that hopefully doesn't explode into something bigger, I'm not working out that muscle, that spiritual muscle of steadfastness, Yeah, I feel like that lay piety, having a good parish where there's a good example of lay piety, can kind of help people who are looking for that desire for steadfastness, that desire from not church hopping. Because if it's part is the affirmation, so your steadfastness is down because you can't handle not being affirmed, but at the same time, it's like, okay, we all have our issues, but how are these people handling their issues? And it's like, well, they're consistent. They're putting their faith fully in God, and every time they get hit, they just get back up. So I'm just wondering if maybe that's part of it, is that they don't have that example. Not to judge people, you're not supposed to be looking at people's piety either.
Yeah.
But simply talking to somebody and being like, man, I've been really struggling with this lately, and they're like, well, here, read this prayer book. Here's this particular prayer. I think it might be good for you. And that's, it's not giving spiritual advice, but it might be like, mull over and talk to the priest about it. I don't know. Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I think that it's just, a lot of it also comes from, it's very common, especially within like the church world of our Protestant friends, Yeah. So I think it is built in to a certain degree to American society. And I think that there's a lot, I think you're right. There's a lot to be said for lay piety. If we can follow the example of our brothers and sisters who are steadfast in the faith during the rough times, and steadfast, within their communities. During times when the community is really making you mad, or you don't feel like it's everything you want it to be.
Yeah. Do you think converts sometimes put pressure on themselves?
Yes.
Especially like to prove, well, you know what I mean, to prove that they're orthodox enough. Like,
oh my gosh, all the time. No, again, I'm going off what my friends have told me, and what people have shared about this kind of thing. But yes, I do. I've seen people like drive themselves into the ground in order to follow what they believe their Orthodox way is. And to be honest, usually it's without the guidance of a priest.
Yeah.
I know people who have fasted to like extents that they should not have fasted because, without the blessing of a priest, because they believed that was necessary. And or my gosh, or who have like deprived themselves of sleep, or who have like a lot of the time it's like all these ascetical practices. I think a lot of people see that and are like, ooh, I'm called to that. Or they'll see the life of a specific saint and they're like, oh my gosh, that saint was doing this. I want to be a saint. I must do that too. Most of the time, that's not true. The fruits of the Spirit, yes. If we're not practicing those, like, that's not great. We're not going to go anywhere fast. But so in the saints practice the fruits of the Spirit and are examples of Christ-likeness and running towards him with open arms. Yes, 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 always. But in the saints, knelt 1,000 nights on a rock. Yeah. Some of us are called to that. Most of us are not. And I think that a lot of my brothers and sisters who have come into the faith kind of see that and are like, I must do that to be saved. Yeah, and generally that's not true. So if your priest blesses certain ascetical practices, thank God, that's a part of your prayer rule now. Most of the time your priest is, if you go and say, hey, I'd like to kneel 1,000 nights on the rock, your priest is going to say, absolutely not. You may do, 12 prostrations during your evening prayers instead. So do the 12 prostrations with joy and move on with your life and don't kneel on a rock for 1,000 nights. But I think it's really, really easy when you have the examples of the saints before you to think that you're called to that. I mean, heck, I've done it too. I used to read the lives of the saints and be like, oh my goodness, this is it. This is the path for me. It's much, much more up to the discernment of your priest and your father confessor than anything else. You can read 1,000 saint stories, and if you're not, and practice 1,000 ascetic practices, and if they're without a blessing, they're probably not going to do any of us much good.
Yeah. Where is it? Sorry. It's been said that, I've heard this from a certain priest, it's been said that cradles have the patience and wisdom that converts haven't yet gained, and converts have the knowledge and zeal that cradles are still missing. Have you experienced this with some of the converts and cradles as well?
Yes, on both sides. Okay.
So it's not an unfair generalization.
No, it's not. But it's good because it keeps us all humble.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like
cradle is not magic. Magic piety, magical sanctity. Yes, piety very often comes with the territory, but it's not a magic bullet. It's a life lived in the church. Right. The convert zeal is a gift. It's a gift. That Christ gives to renew the church and to remind those of us who might be tempted to kind of plod along less mindfully, since maybe we've been doing it for a little while. It's to remind us, like, oh no, look, this is what we have, and we're called to this spark of life and renewal all the time. So. Yeah, I don't know. I like it because it calls both of us to higher things, and it reminds both of us of our shortcomings, and it draws us together by pointing out that we need each other. Yeah. We cannot function without one another.
What's one strength from the cradle side and one from the convert that you wish more people celebrated?
I think for cradles, I think for cradles, the kind of the Orthodox phronema, which you talked about at the beginning, and which we've more or less been talking about all along. Yeah. I think to have that, it's a little bit like a compass. I'm trying to decide whether or not to share an anecdote. My mom, who converted in her early 20s, jokes sometimes because she's been in the church for almost 30 years, and I've been in the church for a little less than that, having been baptized as a baby. And she'll joke sometimes that her children have more of the Orthodox phronima than she does, because we had nothing, like we knew nothing else.
No baggage.
Right, no baggage, no unlearning of other things. We all have some things to unlearn because we live in the West, and it's a little bit different. There are some things which don't accord, with Orthodoxy. Not trashing the West, just noting. Yeah. That there are some things that have yet to be baptized. But she'll say, you guys, you have more of an Orthodox phronima than I do, even though I've been in the church longer. Yeah. And once in a while, if something comes up, she'll ask one of us, what about this situation? God bless her. She's a very humble woman. And one of us will just kind of say what we think, and a lot of the time she'll be like, yeah, that sounds like the mind of the church. Yeah. And it's no merit to any of us. It's a blessing that we were given because we got to grow up, in a practicing family in the church. It doesn't make any of us, inherently any wiser. It's just a gift. It's just a gift. So I think that can be a real strength, to have the mind of the church in that way. It's a gift none of us asked for because we were too little to ask for it. Yeah. And it's a gift that none of us deserve, Lord knows. But He is wise, and He has given it to us for His own wise purposes. And then I think for converts, there is a humility which a lot of folks who are converting bring into the church, which is one of the most beautiful and convicting things I have ever seen. When they first are receiving the church and coming and learning, and this will usually continue some time into the first months or sometimes years of their full membership in the church. This kind of humility, like I get to receive this life which has been passed down for millennia, this like the truth. So many people I've seen just, it's like they're reaching out with both hands, faces, lifted up to Christ with such humility that they get to receive the body and blood of Christ. Most of the world doesn't. Most of the world doesn't get any of this. For so many reasons, which are all under God's providence, I know. But there's just this kind of this wonder and, such a beautiful humility that I think Cradles really, really, really need to receive into themselves and to take on themselves, that we are recipients of this grace, that we have been entrusted with this, the pearl of great price, that God has blessed us for some reason within His wisdom, me and not my neighbor, with, next door. My neighbor next door doesn't get to be raised in this, and doesn't get to live this life, doesn't have this pearl. It's such, I don't know, I could go on and on. It's such a beautiful thing. And I think that Cradles really, really need to step back and be like, no, we are not worthy of this. We have been given a gift, and we need to hold out our hands open and look up to Christ and just receive it with the same humility.
One thing I've noticed is some converts, they bring in really intense political or social ideologies into the church. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, whether that's far right, far left, or some
Yeah.
other extreme, and they try to baptize it as Orthodox.
Yeah.
How do you think Cradle Orthodox view the danger of trying to use Orthodoxy as a vehicle for political or ideological agendas that are ultimately contrary to the faith?
Well, I mean, I think the way anyone else would see it, which is just, this is silly.
Yeah.
Not in a pejorative way. It's silly for us to try and make the church fit our politics. The church informs our politics. I don't know. I don't think of myself as super political. But if you were to point to certain points on right or left, I would agree or disagree with, certain things. But I've always felt like it was really the church's job to inform those things, as opposed to, I don't know, you can't, you can't fit a round peg in a square hole.
Yeah.
Some things are just going to be completely inconsistent with the church. Some politics are going to be, they just are. And, it's a good sign to let it go at that point. But yeah, I don't think it's I don't think it's bad to have political views.
Yeah.
At all, as long as it's the church, giving rise to those, and not those giving rise to, how we practice our faith. Which is also not to say that I think the church should dabble in politics, but I mean the values. I think that the values which inform our politics, those values are something we should receive from the church.
Of course. Do you think this political thing is a temptation for anybody in the church, not just converts and Cradle?
Oh, anyone in the church would say yes, most likely. I think so, because we've all seen it. We've all been super political, or are at this instant, or have friends or neighbors or family who are. So I think anyone who's kind of seen it can say yeah. It's another case of we have to be really careful when we have zeal without knowledge.
Yeah, of course. So following that thought, I've seen some converts glorify political figures who actually persecuted the church, like a certain leader of Germany whose name we can't say on YouTube. Stalin, who killed millions. Yeah, even more recent ones like Bill Clinton and Tito of Yugoslavia, who both...
I need to do some Wikipedia reading. I don't know who this second person is, which is embarrassing, but
Tito was the leader of Yugoslavia before it was broken up. Okay. And he persecuted the Serbian Orthodox Church because they had ties to nationalism.
Oh, right.
But also ties to the former monarchy of the Serbian nation. And so he thought they were a threat. When Orthodoxy doesn't align with their political views, some walk away from the faith altogether. What do you think causes that kind of disordered loyalty, and how can the church help converts root their identity in Christ rather than in political ideologies or personalities?
I think it's a kind of render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, unto God what is God's kind of situation. That comes up a lot around tax season, which is really funny. I don't have wisdom for this. I'm going to take a shot based on what the church says that I can remember.
It's always safe. That's the safest bet.
I don't know. I guess I don't. I don't have much to say on it, and I don't know that the church has much to say on it either, from what I can remember, besides the very basic, Christ first.
Christ first.
If you're following, we don't follow people. We follow Christ.
Yeah.
And so I think that if I don't know. I think if it's just as long as we are dedicating ourselves to following Christ first, we'll be led where we need to lead. I also happen to be of the opinion that if you're following Christ, he's not going to lead you towards most of the ideologies that you mentioned. But yeah, I don't know. As long as it's Christ first. And if you don't, as for churches, I don't know. It's probably the same. I mean, I think it's important for the church communities and for the priests to support the laity in this, especially when there's a member of the community who seems to be super, super kind of drawn in that direction, just to kind of try and help, if possible, to help keep our brothers and sisters grounded if we can. But we all have free will. People are going to do what they're going to do. But yeah, I don't know. Christ first. And, when we're following Christ, we'll go where we need to go. And if we're not following Christ, we'll go all over the place. And that's something everybody knows. And I don't know if I don't know that there's much more to be said.
Yeah. So do you think this is more of a catechesis issue or heart issue or both?
I think it's probably both, depending on the person. I would expect that it varies depending on the person. I think and the catechesis issue is probably easier to fix by providing good catechism when people are coming into the church. The heart issue is much more of a God concern, because the heart is Christ's. But yeah, it probably depends on the person.
So, I'm trying to figure. Sorry. What gives you the most hope when you look at the future of the church here in America, both for cradles and converts? Trying to find a place in it.
Well, I can see that the church is growing. That gives me a lot of hope. I noticed that in a lot of places the church grew after the adversity of COVID. Depending on, there were all different parishes did different things under different directives and different hierarchs, and that's okay. But I noticed that a lot of parishes kind of were pruned in one way or another, and that I think a lot of them have experienced growth since that time, and I think that's really, really good, and it gives me a lot of hope. The other thing that encourages me is maybe something that would not be encouraging for a lot of people, which is that there's an increasing number of people coming to the faith who really have no prior context for Christianity and very little prior exposure. I could be very wrong, but I think that might be a good thing because they're not going to come probably with the same kind of baggage. Especially if you come from like a Protestant background, there's so much to unlearn. Most people have to kind of freak out about the Theotokos and freak out about icons and priests and confession and so many other things. And that's part of the journey. And it's worthy. And at the same time, I think that it might be really good for some people to come without the baggage of previous experiences with other iterations of Christianity. The third thing I have to say is Appalachian music. When the church starts to take root in a culture, like really take root in a culture, it starts to take on, like the music of the church starts to take on some of the aspects of the culture's music. And so watching Appalachian and church music really, really kind of start to take root, and it's starting to be used, a little bit here and there in the churches. It's certainly taking off on YouTube. That gives me a lot of joy because I think there's a lot that's going to come from that.
How do you see cradles helping converts coming in with that type of baggage? How would y'all help kind of unload them, so to speak?
I honestly think I have two thoughts on this. The first one is that it might be helpful, and I don't know, it might be helpful for folks who are converting just to kind of come in and see the cradles doing what they're doing. This has been, probably their whole life, practicing, they're okay. Lord willing, they're grounded in the faith, Lord willing. It's just kind of an example of the living, functioning, breathing life of the church. Like, you're spiritually growing and developing through this life in the church. You're okay. This is probably okay. What I honestly think might be more helpful for a lot of people, though, is hearing the experiences of folks who also converted, but like 20 to 30 years ago. Because I know that my mother, who converted, between 20 and 30 years ago, her experiences, having to unload that baggage, hearing about those, when people ask, has been really, really helpful, I think, for a lot of folks who are unloading the same baggage. And then in 20 to 30 years, those, the same, it will continue and it will continue and it will continue. Mm-hmm. We share our experiences, the common ones, and I think that probably is helpful for a lot of people.
You've probably had so many thoughts over the years watching people come into the church. Is there anything you've always wanted to say to converts but never had the space or moment to?
Welcome home.
Welcome home. It's beautiful. Not to throw the devil in your face, but I have to say this real quick. Since God gifted you such great talent for singing, I want to ask you something a little different, if that's all right.
Sure.
If orthodoxy were a song, what note or tone do you hope your life sings within it?
Tone 5, because that's the Paschal tone. Most of the Paschal music is in tone 5. And that same resurrection is what I hope and pray for myself.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for taking the time to share your perspectives and experiences. I know these topics are not always easy to navigate, but your insight as someone raised in the faith and someone who's lived it actively, especially through your time in Mexico, adds a depth that a lot of us converts really need to hear. I hope this conversation can help others grow, and God willing, I'd love to continue these types of discussions in the future. If that's okay. So I just want to say it. So that was Xenia, and I am grateful she has shared her time and heart with us. Conversations like this remind me that orthodoxy isn't something we master in books or debate threads, but something we're formed by over time, through the church, through service, and through the lives of faithful people around us. Whether you come to orthodoxy through birth or baptism, we all have something to learn from one another. If there's one thing I hope you take from this conversation, it's that orthodoxy is not a tool to validate your politics, your personality, or your opinions. It's not here to serve your worldview, it is here to crucify it. What you heard today wasn't just nostalgia or tradition, it was the voice of someone who has lived the faith. Not argued it online, not weaponized it in culture wars, but suffered, served, and grown quietly within it. If you're a convert, don't mistake your zeal for maturity. And if you're a cradle, don't mistake your inheritance for sanctity. The church doesn't hand out trophies for good intentions. She offers a cross, which we will either carry or we won't. The series isn't about comforting anyone, it's about truth, and sometimes truth stings, but it also saves. So may God give us all humility to listen, the courage to repent, the wisdom to begin again. I hope this conversation encouraged you, challenged you, or at least reminded you of why we are here, to become Christ-like. Thank you for joining us today for the first, and God willing, not the last, interview in the Wisdom from the Cradle series. My name is Sophroni. Until next time, stay steadfast, stay humble, and thank you for listening.